Being scared to ask questions at work is a legitimate fear that many people have, and they suffer in silence with it. However, if this fear is not curbed in time and it goes on for too long, it can have very negative effects on your work performance and just your work life in general, including your self-esteem. Now, this topic definitely hits close to home because, child, I have definitely been through it. And at the time, I never really sat down and questioned, why was I so fearful of asking questions? But when I look back at it, I think my main fear, which I'm sure resonates with a lot of other people, is that I was just afraid of the question being a stupid question, or people thinking I was stupid for even asking the question. So yes, that is a very common reason why a lot of people just don't ask questions at work altogether. But there are other reasons as well. And sometimes it might be a mixture of reasons that make you decide, maybe I shouldn't ask. But obviously, the first most common reason is that fear. That debilitating fear that what if people think that I'm stupid for asking the question? Or what if the question is a stupid question? But the second fear is actually incompetency. So that's when you think that people are going to be thinking that you don't know how to do your job properly. That's why you're asking all of these questions. So you look like an incompetent employee. A lot of the time, this usually happens in cases when, let's say, somebody started at the company and they're new, but they were hired because of, let's say, the wealth of experience they have in that particular industry. And so they believe that the employer is looking at them to just hit the ground running and know what to do because they have all of this knowledge and all of this experience. And so when that's not showing, or when you're asking so many questions, then somehow you feel like people are going to have a lessened view of you, or not think that highly of you because now you're asking questions that you probably think that you should already know, if that makes sense. But on the flip side, this can also be common for somebody that's been at the company for a very long time. And so in that case, they might feel like asking a question, they should know this question because, they've been at the company for so long. And the fact that they don't know this question, that can prevent them from even asking as well. And the third most common fear of being scared to ask questions at work is fear of bothering people. So that fear of, thinking that everyone's busy and they've got a lot of things going on, and the fact that you're interrupting them, they're going to be, let's say, annoyed, for example, because you're taking time out of their day. And you just don't want to be a nuisance to anybody. So that can be another very debilitating reason why you don't ask questions at work. If any of these reasons resonate with you, please let me know below. In my experience, what I found was when I didn't ask questions, my life at work was 10 times harder because it took me longer to get jobs done because I was spending ages trying to find the answer. I'm talking like anything from like 30 minutes to an hour, even above, just to get like my questions answered for one question. Sometimes I would get the wrong information thinking it was the right information. I would end up making a lot of mistakes at work and then being pulled up on these mistakes. And then when you do that, then obviously now the manager knows that you don't know what you're doing and wondering, how come you don't know? And it's because you didn't ask. So what I'm trying to say is, please do not allow your fear of asking questions at work to end up jeopardizing your performance in your job. Because honestly, it's worse when you don't ask the question and then you end up making the mistakes, and then somebody has to then, teach you that way, rather than if you just ask the question in the beginning. It's just so much easier. So please just ask questions when you need to. Now, trust me, I know that's easier said than done. So I'm going to teach you the strategy of how to overcome your fear of being scared to ask questions at work. Now, the first and probably the most important way to get over this fear is to change your mindset. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, I've talked about the things that make people scared to ask questions at work. For example, people thinking that you're going to be incompetent. Maybe people think you're asking a stupid question. You don't want to bother people, things of that nature. Now, although those are legitimate fears, what you need to realize is that you are not in somebody's head. So you do not know what they're thinking when you're asking them the question. If you want to know the truth, most of the time when you ask somebody a question, they're actually flattered at the fact that you've asked them the question, because that means that you value their opinion, their knowledge, or their skill set. So it's a form of flattery, actually. So anytime you need to ask a question at work, try and see it from that point of view. Now, step 2 in knowing how to overcome the fear of asking questions at work is to know who to ask. Because let me tell you, if you ask the wrong person a question, you are going to regret asking the question altogether, and probably that will deter you even further from asking questions in the future. Now I'm going to tell you why I said that. There was one time at one of my previous jobs where I was at work and I didn't understand how to do a certain thing. I can't remember what it was. And so I had a meeting with a client and I had to explain how to use a certain part of the software, and I didn't really understand it myself. So I needed some help and guidance. And I chose to ask one of my colleagues. This was when I was fairly new. We both started around about the same time. Now, this was the mistake that I made. At first, I was hesitant to ask him in the first place, and it was for very good reason. I could tell by the way that he interacted with other people just generally that sometimes he could be quite abrasive in his communication, and I guess that was just the way he communicated with everyone, and everyone seemed to be fine with it. But that kind of communication didn't work for me. I don't like when people are like abrasive and can be like just nonchalant and quite rude sometimes. But I just decided to put all of that to the side and say, you know what, I need help. Let me just ask this person. This person seems to know about this particular topic, so let me just ask him. So I decided to ask him. I booked a meeting so that we could both have time and he could explain this thing to me. And I just remember him being very cocky and arrogant, using phrases like, yeah, this is quite easy, you should know this already, things like that. And he was like saying stuff like that all through while trying to explain to me. And, I just bit my tongue and listened to all he had to say until it was over. And because I was so just annoyed by his approach of just, he's just very arrogant and I know everything attitude, I didn't even end up taking the information that he was telling me because I was just so annoyed by his approach and the way that he was treating me. And so when that was over, now I know this might sound pretty trivial, but I went to the toilet. I locked myself in the work toilet and I had a little bit of a cry. I did. The reason why I suppose that I cried, or just everything just became really overwhelming at that point, it was just the fact that my fear had been realized. Like, obviously, as I said in the beginning, my fear was somebody thinking that I was stupid for asking a question. And so when he started treating me like that, obviously it's like my fear was coming true. And so that just crippled me in that moment. Well, after that situation, I just went downhill, because then I just completely stopped asking questions. I was scared to ask questions at work now because I didn't want a situation like that to repeat itself. And because of that, I was suffering in silence because there were so many questions that I needed to ask. And, I was spending ages on the computer trying to research, trying to find this question. And sometimes you can't find all of your answers by researching. Sometimes you just need to ask somebody. So my work started deteriorating. My performance wasn't where it should have been because I didn't have the information that I needed. So why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this to make you understand that the type of person that you ask questions to is very important. So how do you go about knowing the right person to ask? First thing you need to do is make sure that you observe people at work. So observe just how people act with people in general. So you might see that there's some colleagues that are quite, abrasive, quite upfront, quite forward, quite blunt. And there's some others that are not like that. Maybe they're quite courteous, they're polite, they like to help. So look at the different personalities and you'll know the type of personalities that you can communicate well with. Before I go any further, if you're somebody that is currently job searching right now, but you're facing constant rejection at the job interviews, no matter how many job interviews you go for, you keep getting rejected, then I have the thing for you. I have a free interview confidence webinar that is helping many candidates like yourself to start acing interviews and getting the jobs that they want as early as 2 weeks to a month into job searching. So if that's something that you want to do, if you want to nail a job soon and nail a job that is part of your salary expectation, then go to that video. Just because somebody is intelligent and knows a lot about a certain field doesn't mean that you should ask them the question, because if they don't have the right personality and they're quite abrasive, it's not going to help you. So when you found somebody that has, quite a welcoming, approachable personality, someone that, likes helping or being helpful, then, you choose that person to ask questions to. I would say try and find at least 2 to 3 people that are like this, that are also knowledgeable just in the topic or just your particular work field. I say choose 2 to 3 because obviously you're going to have a lot of questions as time goes on, and you don't just want to bombard one person with all of those questions. So having a few people and being able to divide those questions evenly helps as well. So now let's get into the question itself, because you need to have a strategy of how to ask questions, especially how to ask good questions, in order to eliminate that fear of being scared to ask questions in the first place. And there definitely is a strategy of how to go about this to make you more confident in yourself, to start asking questions when you need help. So the first thing is, as soon as you have a question, don't rush to ask the question right away. Do your best to resolve the question by yourself. I say this because sometimes the answer might be somewhere in plain sight that you probably just haven't looked at. So maybe the question might be in the email chain, but you didn't spend enough time looking at that, or it might be in a certain guide that you were supposed to read or whatever. So do what you can to try and resolve the information yourself. But if you find that you can't, then obviously ask the question. And obviously, if it's taking longer than 5 to 10 minutes to find an answer to a question, then now you know that you're going to be wasting time. So it's best to then go and ask the question. Now this leads me on to my second point, which is how to ask the question. Because how you phrase the question is actually very important. And I learned this from a previous experience with one of my ex-employers. At one of my previous jobs, I used to have a manager that was quite, again, abrasive. And bless him, I really just think that was just the way he communicated with people. That was just his personality style. But it did rub a lot of people the wrong way. Luckily, me and him never had any issues, but because he was such an abrasive personality, I always had that fear that, one day he was going to be abrasive with me, and I didn't want that situation to occur or give him any chance to be able to, be rude to me or anything of that nature. And one day, I think it was at a team meeting or something, and he said something in passing which stuck with me. He said that he didn't have a problem with people asking questions. He had a problem when he hadn't seen the effort that they'd taken to actually look for the answer themselves before they brought the question to him. And so what I mean by this is, when you have a question and you want to ask a question, obviously do the bit you can to try and look for the answer. And then when you ask the question, also state where you've gone to look for the information and you couldn't find. So at least they know that you made some effort to try and find this information. Or maybe you found some information but not the whole thing and you're asking for clarification, things of that nature. That really helps whoever you're asking to be more forthcoming in helping you with that particular question, if that makes sense. That's how you ask a good question, and that will give you the confidence to now go and ask whoever it is that question without feeling like, oh, maybe they're going to feel like I should know this already, or maybe they're going to think I'm stupid or incompetent. All of that fear will now go outside, because now you've got proof that you've tried to find information about this. So now you know who to ask questions to and how you should ask the question. Now you have to plan your approach of asking the question. So this tip is going to eliminate the fear of you feeling like you're bothering people, because it's true, there are good and bad times of when to ask somebody a question. For me personally, I know it works for some people, but for me personally, I never just go up to somebody unannounced and just ask them a question, because for me, I don't know if they're in the middle of something. I don't know if they're in the middle of writing an email. I don't know if they're about to take a phone call. I don't know anything, and I'm just gonna, interrupt them and just sprout out a question on them. So that's usually not the approach that I use. If it's a quick question and you need the answer quite soon, I would say, instant message them. Usually different organizations have different instant communication styles, whether it's Slack or whether it's Teams meeting, chat, whatever it is, you can just pop them a quick message asking them a question. If it's a quick question that you need an answer to, I would say look at the status that they have, make sure that it shows that they're available and not that they're busy, for example. That's if you need an answer quick. Another way you can do it is also by emailing them, sending them an email. It's not as effective as the instant messaging. I usually find I get answers quicker on the instant messaging one than I do in the email. But email is also another strategy you can use, especially if it's a longer question that the person might need to go through some thought process in order to get back to you with a good enough answer. Now, if it's a very in-depth question that is going to need a very in-depth answer that might take, more than 15 minutes to really explain to you, like maybe someone needs to demonstrate something to you or something like that, then obviously it's better to schedule a meeting for that kind of thing. So go through that person's calendar, see when they're free. I would usually say ask them before, will this time be good for you? And then let's say you instant message them, can you explain this to me? Will this time be good for you? When they agree, then you just slot that into their diary. And then at least you know that you've got that part of their free time and they can take you through that. And, they'll appreciate that, you've considered their time and you've booked in a time where they'll be free to explain this to you. So it'll work in your favor. And the last step is to manage your response to the answer to the question. So what I mean by this is, when the person is explaining the answer to you, your response is very important. But what you don't want to do is never interrupt someone while they're trying to explain something to you, because it just interrupts the flow of the whole conversation and it doesn't make you sound polite. So don't interrupt them. Make sure that you are engaged and that you're listening to what they're saying, so that they acknowledge that you're taking in what they're telling you. And after they finish providing you the answer, make sure that you thank them for their time and, having the time to give you the answer, things of that nature. Show your appreciation, and that will make them more inclined to want to help you the next time you come to them with a question, rather than, just saying, all right, and then you're off. after they've given you their advice. You'll always make sure that you thank them for their time and that you are appreciative. It's very important. So that is all of my tips on how to overcome the fear of being scared to ask questions at work and how to ask good questions as well. If you found that helpful, press like. If you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe to my channel for videos like this and also videos on how to pass interviews and get the job that you want. See you in the next video.